The Great Schism was arguably the greatest religious split the world has ever seen. What if the two churches had settled their differences and the Great Schism was avoided? Which would kickstart the First Crusade, as the combined force of the Byzantines and the Crusaders would quickly come to overwhelm. Political instability would plague the realm, as Serbia and Bulgaria would both attempt to break free. Byzantium's future remains uncertain.
Whoa! What happened? What was I doing? Oh, yeah, an alternate history video on what if the East-West Schism didn't happen. Weird, I don't remember making the first part. Anyway, in this timeline, the Byzantines are much more secure, having no Turkic populations, controlling most of Anatolia, and having a decent buffer in the Balkans. In addition, many of the Crusader states, formed after the Second Crusade, have fallen under Byzantine influence. Before we move on any further, we need to talk about Andronikos I. Now, you may have gotten this from just a Greek historian, but Andronikos was not the best ruler, having constant feuds with the military, being highly autocratic and self-serving. Generally, he wasn't a very nice guy. Now, Andronikos had two legitimate sons, Manuel and John. Since Manuel was older, he was first in line to the throne. But after opposing some of his father's actions, instead his brother John was placed as co-emperor. This didn't really cause many problems in our timeline, since both John and Manuel were killed after the deposition of their father, leading to the rise of the Angelos dynasty. However, since the Angelos don't rise to power, Andronikos passes away of natural causes, most likely in his early 70s. Andronikos' death in the mid to late 1190s begins a succession conflict between John and Manuel. As though John was the appointed successor, he was seen by the Byzantine vassals as a continuation of his father's tyranny, and Manuel, in contrast, was much more reasonable. The widespread support of Manuel would eventually culminate in him taking the crown after a brief civil war. Now, the newly anointed Manuel, now Manuel II, being the emperor, causes the Byzantines to develop a deeper friendship with its nearby Catholic state, Georgia. At this time, Georgia was entering into a golden age under King Tamar, and due to Manuel's marriage to the king's sister, the Byzantines and the Georgians would now become allies. This will be important later. Sorry to interrupt the video, but since I hit 500 subscribers, I'm now contractually obligated to do that YouTuber thing now. Did you know that over 80% of my viewers are unsubscribed? To keep up to date with all the crazy videos I have planned, and to help us to get to 1K subs, please make sure to subscribe. Also, PS, I have a Discord now. The link to it should be in the description of this video, so if you want to check that out, it would be greatly appreciated. Back to your regularly scheduled programming. Likely, the first thing Manuel would want to accomplish is to reclaim the newly independent states of Bulgaria and Serbia, which had managed to achieve independence under Andronikos' reign. Unfortunately, Manuel II would not have the time to invade, as another invasion would require his full attention. Down south, the Ayyubids in Egypt began to march their army into the Crusader kingdom of Jerusalem in 1206. Having successfully defeated a Crusader force a few years ago, they felt confident in their ability to recover Jerusalem. Upon the invasion of Jerusalem, the Pope would call for the Fourth Crusade. The Pope was already planning on launching a crusade against the Ayyubids, with the final goal of establishing a Christian state in the region. The Crusades called together forces from the HRE, France, and Hungary, similar to the Fifth Crusade in our timeline. This time, however, the Byzantines, seeing the threat that an expanded Egypt could pose on their southern holdings and protectorates, decided to fully commit to the war, though to take advantage of their diplomatic situation, they would only agree to join the war if the Queen of Jerusalem, Maria of Montferrat, married his son Alexios, to which the Queen, already looking for a husband, agreed to. Initially, the Ayyubids would be able to make minor gains due to their surprise strike, seizing several towns and fortresses, but in their first face-off against a combined Crusader force, they would be pushed back. Subsequent attacks from the Crusader army would manage to push the Ayyubids quickly back to Egypt, but they wouldn't stop there. They would then initiate the original plan for the Crusade, an invasion of the Nile. The combined Crusader forces would begin to land on the Nile Delta, and begin to seize key forts. They'd be moderately successful against the Ayyubid forces initially, but as they continued to push further upstream, the more losses they would face. Eventually, peace between the Crusaders and the Ayyubids would be called, as both sides sustained significant casualties. The peace would likely include an expansion of the Kingdom of Jerusalem, as well as the return of a few religious relics to the Christians. Though this was not the ideal result for the Crusaders, it at least guaranteed the security of Jerusalem, and put them in a much better position for further invasions. Through this crusade, the Byzantines managed to vastly improve their position in the eastern Mediterranean, securing a future personal union with an expanded Jerusalem, solidifying their control over the coast of the Levant. A few years later, though, Manuel would probably march north to reconquer Bulgaria, and due to the centralized military force of the Byzantines flourishing under Manuel's head, the Bulgarians would eventually be defeated. Unfortunately, the Kingdom of Hungary, having predicted the Byzantines' aims to reconquer the Balkans, had already moved to secure the independence of Serbia, using it as a buffer state. Having just fought in a crusade, the Byzantines wouldn't want to start another costly conflict so soon, and so Serbia for the time being would remain independent. From this point on, the Byzantines begin to rebuild, both securing trade and rebuilding its military strength in its coffers for another... Wait, who's that at the door? Oh, hello Mongol Empire, what are you doing? In the early 1200s, the Mongols would begin to rapidly expand, annexing much of Iran the same as in our timeline. Another event that's the same in our timeline is the invasion of Georgia in 1220. After the first battle between Georgian and Mongol troops, the Byzantines would probably move in to defend them, as they would see Georgia as an important barrier for their position in the Caucasus Mountains. There would likely be many Mongol-Byzantine wars, just due to their location, but since the Mongols would be unable to dislodge Byzantine control over Anatolia and the Levant, a permanent peace solution would be declared, both agreeing to a permanent border. But just as the Mongols invade the Middle East, so too did they strike at Europe proper. The Mongol invasion of Hungary would be of particular interest to the Byzantine Emperor, as the incursion would weaken the Hungarians enough to take back Serbia and some lands up to the Danube without much resistance.
Now that the Byzantine borders are mostly secured and they have extended themselves as far as they can in Europe and the Middle East, they would now begin to prosper with the new territories, allowing for trade to flourish, especially with a secured peace between them and the Mongols. To a certain extent, the Byzantines may replace the Italian republics in the role of the economic hegemon of the Mediterranean, with their empire being able to take advantage of the naval passage to the Red Sea for goods from India, access to the Silk Road, and a strong navy to gain trading ports. Throughout the next 50 years or so, the empire would flourish as their economy, army, navy, and quality of life prospered. This period of peace would lead to a form of early renaissance within Byzantium, with developments in art and science being abundant. In addition, a widespread push to entirely Christianize the Holy Land, with those that refuse to convert either being deported to nearby states or being killed. This effort would be aided by the unification of the Byzantine-influenced Crusader states into Byzantium proper. The Byzantines during this period would put heavy influence on religion, and the role of the church within the daily life and even in the capital would strengthen. Due to these religious reforms, it is even possible that the Pope moves his seat from Rome to Constantinople, as a symbol of the unity between the East and the West, which would likely, up until this point, have several differences in interpretation. Internal developments wouldn't be the only change to Byzantium during this timeline, as they are likely to join another crusade, the fifth one, again against Egypt. The Byzantines would likely support this crusade to remove any threat from their territory around the Holy Land and to maintain the safety of the Red Sea trade. This crusade, with the much weaker Ayyubids against two of the most powerful European states, would quickly result in the Muslim forces being crushed and the implementation of a French noble to the throne of the new Kingdom of Egypt. Byzantium would also likely expand further into the Balkans, vassalizing Wallachia to the detriment of Hungary. The Byzantines also would see use in expanding their influence within the Mediterranean, seizing Malta as a naval base and beginning to influence the kingdoms of Sicily and Naples, and if the Pope moves to Constantinople, even the area around Rome.
Oh, my head. Anyway, things would begin to heat up again as the Mongol Empire began to fragment, with the establishment of the Ilkhanate and its adoption of Islam. It would likely not care about the peace treaty between its overlord and Byzantium, and in a quest for glory, the Khan of the Ilkhanate would strike Byzantium. After a few successes, they would stand no chance against the armies of Byzantium in its Golden Age, and a combined force of Georgian and Byzantine troops would likely even force the concession of some territories. With the total collapse of the Ilkhanate around 1345, a massive power vacuum appears which Byzantium would certainly try to exploit, moving into secure Mesopotamia. They would also likely pit rival groups against each other in the region to ensure no strong rival can emerge. With the weakening position of the Golden Horde to the north, it's also possible that the Byzantines exploit this in the 1370s to achieve greater autonomy for the Christian Russians and reclaim Crimea. The 1400s would mark the beginning of the end for the Byzantine Golden Age, as many new threats would rise up. By the 1400s, they would have likely secured all the way up to modern Slovenia, as continuous conflicts with the Hungarians lead to more control of the Balkans. By the late 1400s, the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth begins to pose a threat to Byzantine ambitions in the Balkan, with them beginning to influence Moldavia, very possibly leading to a war between the two. Though by then, the Byzantines' power would begin to fade, and a newer state like Poland and Lithuania would be able to defeat them in the conflict, leading to the Byzantines recognizing Polish-Lithuanian influence over Moldavia. Additionally, after years of defeat at the hands of the Byzantines, the Hungarians would begin to align themselves with the Polish-Lithuanians for protection, potentially leading to a union between the three states. Over in the east, a mostly unified Persian kingdom would be established under the Timurid Empire. Feeling threatened due to their new powerful neighbor, and after crusades in North Africa led to overwhelming Christian victories, establishing an Italian kingdom in North Africa, the expansion of the Egyptian Crusader kingdom, and the establishment of a Spanish-ruled Morocco, the Byzantines may convince the Pope to declare a crusade against Persia. However, due to the lack of overall threat this Persian state poses to Europe, and the lack of critical holy sites in the region, I would predict the crusade would not attract many nations, especially not those which would oppose the Byzantines in Europe. This may even be the point where the Georgians break ties with the Byzantines, as they increasingly seek lands held by the Byzantines, and wouldn't see the invasion of Persia to be necessary for their goals or safety. Due to the minimal support and mountainous terrain of Persia, I don't see any way that this crusade can succeed, only strengthening the zeal of Byzantium's neighbor. In addition, the Byzantines' realm of influence over the Mediterranean begins to clash with that of the Spanish kingdoms, with a sore spot developing over southern Italy, potentially resulting in several naval engagements. Though Byzantium now has new enemies, they also gain new allies. First, after supporting an independence war from the Golden Horde and expanding its Crimean territory in the process, it gains an ally that is poised to become the largest state on Earth, the Grand Duchy of Moscow. The Byzantines would also likely foster good relations with the British, as they are enemies of both the French and the Spanish, both of which wish to expand their influence in Italy. And much further in the future, they would align themselves with a militarist state in the north, in opposition to Poland and rising Austrian Empire. Overall, this world is a lot more Christian, with Christianity being entrenched in the Holy Land, much of the Middle East, and all of Anatolia. Additionally, Greek remains as the primary lingua franca of the Eastern Mediterranean, much of the Italian peninsula, and the Middle East. Though, Byzantium's golden age has come to a close and enemies are piling up around Rome. But that's all for this episode. I hope you enjoyed this video. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to both my and Just a Greek Historian's channel. He makes awesome content over there, and I couldn't have made this video without him. Comment down below any suggestions you have for future video topics. On screen now is a video which YouTube thinks you'll like. Stay crazy!